The afternoon sun poured through the tall windows of the Forrester mansion, casting long shadows across the sleek white floors and the scattered couture sketches that Taylor had been pretending to study, but hadn't really looked at in hours. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the phone, the recent confrontation with Sheila still echoing in her mind like a cold, unrelenting wind that refused to die down. Taylor knew the women's world she had once navigated with grace, charm, and intelligence had now become a minefield of deceit and betrayal, and Sheila was standing at the epicenter of it all, laughing at every misstep and pain Taylor had endured. The memories flooded back in a relentless torrent, Sheila manipulating Deacon's emotions, scheming in ways that twisted reality until everyone around her was confused and frightened, the way she had insinuated herself into every vulnerable moment, every open heart, and every unsuspecting plan, until the people Taylor cared about most were trapped in her poisonous web. Taylor's mind raced, frantic, seeking a solution, any solution that could finally stop Sheila before someone else got hurt. For the first time in a long time, fear and desperation combined to ignite something Taylor had never thought possible in herself, a fierce, almost primal determination. She had tried reasoning, pleading, and even relying on the law, but Sheila had always been one step ahead, charming, deceptive, and utterly fearless. Taylor knew that waiting any longer could be catastrophic. She could see the pattern now, the inevitability of more lies, more scheming, more heartbreak if she didn't act. That evening, she found herself at a small, unassuming store tucked between the bustling streets of Los Angeles, the kind of place that didn't ask questions and offered anonymity in exchange for cash. Every step she took inside felt surreal, almost cinematic in its tension, the muted hum of fluorescent lights, the distant clatter of doors opening and closing, and the hushed murmur of strangers who had no idea the storm that had just entered their midst. Taylor's eyes scanned the rows of carefully organized items until they settled on the corner where the weapons were displayed, each one gleaming under the cold, artificial light like a promise of resolution. Her hands were shaking, but she tried to steady herself, gripping the counter nervously as the clerk, a young man with a polite but detached demeanor, asked the routine questions about identification and permits. Taylor's heart pounded in her chest. She felt every second stretch into an eternity, every breath a battle against panic and moral hesitation. Yet beneath it all, there was an unspoken, undeniable sense of necessity. She was not acting on a whim, not out of malice, but out of a desperate, almost suffocating need to protect herself, her family, and the fragile peace that had been shattered time and time again by Sheila's unrelenting schemes. As she completed the purchase, cradling the small, cold weight of the gun in her hands, she felt a mixture of dread and relief, the paradoxical emotions of someone who knew that the path she was about to walk could never be walked back. Returning home, Taylor was hyper-aware of every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the distant traffic, even the subtle hum of the refrigerator seemed amplified, each one a potential harbinger of disaster. She placed the gun on the kitchen counter, meticulously arranging it so that it was both accessible and out of sight, her mind a whirlwind of possibilities and contingencies. She rehearsed the confrontation in her head, imagining Sheila's smirk, the sharpness of her voice, and the way she would twist every word Taylor said into some cruel, manipulative justification for her next move. But Taylor was ready. She had convinced herself that there was no other way, that the long history of manipulation, betrayal, and near tragedy demanded decisive action. She knew Sheila would never voluntarily leave or change. The woman thrived on chaos and control. Taylor's resolve hardened as she pictured Sheila walking into the house, blissfully unaware of the storm that had been quietly brewing for weeks, the storm she had now personally summoned. That night, the Forrester estate was cloaked in a silence so thick it was almost tangible. The kind of quiet that preceded a storm, the kind of quiet that made every footstep echo like a warning. Taylor paced the living room, her fingers brushing against the edge of the couch, her thoughts spiraling as she envisioned every possible outcome. Sheila had enemies, yes, but none who were as prepared, as personally invested, and as desperate as Taylor. Every moment she hesitated was a moment Sheila could exploit, and Taylor's fear of failure mingled with her fear of confrontation until it became a single, driving force. Act, or watch everything she loved crumble. And then she heard it, the faintest rustle at the door, the subtle shift of the lock in the night. Sheila was here, sooner than expected, and in that instant, Taylor felt a surge of adrenaline so strong it blurred everything else into the background. Her grip on the gun tightened, her pulse quickened, and she could feel the culmination of every slight, every betrayal, every manipulation pressing down on her chest like a tangible weight. Sheila stepped into the room, her eyes glinting with calculated confidence, her smile sharp, predatory, and utterly infuriating. "Taylor," Sheila said, her voice smooth and mocking, "I didn't expect you to go this far." Taylor's response was a silent tightening of the jaw, her resolve unwavering despite the fear threatening to overtake her. Every instinct screamed for dialogue, for retreat, for a rational solution, but Taylor's history with Sheila had taught her the futility of rationality. Sheila thrived on chaos. She was unstoppable through ordinary means. Taylor raised the gun. Slightly, not pointing it yet, but letting the weight of it communicate her seriousness. Sheila's smile faltered for just a heartbeat, and in that instant, Taylor realized that power had shifted, that the predator had become vulnerable, and that the long, torturous game they had played for months, maybe years, was about to reach a climax that neither of them could fully control. Words flew between them like sparks from a fire. Accusations, denials, manipulations, confessions, and lies, all layered on top of each other in a whirlwind of tension that left the room crackling with unspoken threats. Taylor's voice, though calm, carried the steel of finality, the weight of someone who had been pushed too far and could not retreat. Sheila's eyes darted to the gun, her usual confidence shaking just slightly, enough for Taylor to know that fear was now part of her world, a feeling Sheila had rarely, if ever, experienced in a confrontation. For what felt like hours, but was only minutes, the two women circled each other with words as sharp as knives and eyes as unyielding as steel. Taylor reminded Sheila of every betrayal, every lie, every moment of manipulation that had left scars on her soul and her family. Sheila, ever the opportunist, tried to twist every word, to shift blame, to draw Taylor into an emotional trap, but Taylor had prepared for this, anticipating each ploy with meticulous precision. The tension escalated until the air itself seemed to pulse, heavy with unspoken violence and imminent consequence. In a sudden, lightning-fast moment, Sheila lunged, a mixture of desperation and bravado fueling her actions. Taylor, trained by years of navigating crises, reacted instinctively, the gun firing once, a single, deafening shot that shattered the silence of the night and marked the culmination of months of emotional and psychological warfare. The room seemed to pause, suspended in the aftershock, as reality caught up to the actions of both women. Sheila fell, and for a moment, the world held its breath. Taylor, her hands trembling uncontrollably, dropped the gun, the weight of what she had done crashing down in waves of disbelief, relief, and guilt. She knelt beside Sheila, her mind racing with the consequences she would now have to face, the legal ramifications, the reactions of Deacon and Steffi, the judgment of everyone who had ever trusted her. But amidst the chaos, there was also an undeniable clarity, a stark realization that sometimes, in the twisted world of Los Angeles high society and the Forrester legacy, drastic measures were the only way to restore balance, to protect loved ones, and to finally end the reign of someone who thrived on pain and manipulation. Taylor's breath came in ragged gasps, her body shaking as she stared at the outcome of a night that had begun with desperation and ended in irreversible action, knowing that the ripples of this moment would extend far beyond the walls of the mansion, reaching into every life that had been touched by Sheila's relentless schemes. And as the dawn began to creep through the windows, painting the room in pale shades of gold and shadow, Taylor understood that the battle was over, but the consequences, the scrutiny, the heartbreak, the moral reckoning were only just beginning. Taylor's hands still trembled as she rose from the floor, her eyes locked on Sheila's motionless form, a mix of horror and grim satisfaction coursing through her. She knew she couldn't linger. Every second increased the risk of discovery. Every heartbeat was a countdown toward inevitable consequences. Her mind raced, calculating options. Call the police and confess, hide the weapon and wait, or, God forbid, try to cover it up herself. Each scenario seemed more terrifying than the last, yet beneath it all ran a core certainty. Sheila would never harm anyone else if Taylor didn't act. And in that moment, for better or worse, Taylor felt a flicker of empowerment she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of control over a situation that had long felt like it was spiraling beyond her reach. Meanwhile, across town, Deacon's night had been restless. He had been unable to shake the nagging suspicion that something was wrong. Taylor had been distant, distracted, almost haunted. His instincts, honed through years of navigating the unpredictable dramas surrounding Sheila, Taylor, and their tangled past, screamed at him to check on her. Pulling up to the Forrester estate, he parked hastily, practically sprinting to the front door, only to be met with an eerie silence. The familiar warmth of the mansion had vanished, replaced by an oppressive stillness that made his chest tighten. He called Taylor's name, each echo bouncing back in the empty halls unanswered, sending a cold shiver down his spine. Something was wrong. Something very wrong. Inside, Taylor had made a decision. She gathered Sheila's unconscious body in her arms, moving with a mixture of urgency and fear, each step a testament to adrenaline and desperation. The thought of Steffi's reaction flashed in her mind. Steffi, who had always loved her mother fiercely, but who also carried a firebrand sense of justice. How would Steffi respond if she knew? And Deacon, oh, Deacon. He would be torn between rage, grief, and helpless love. Taylor didn't have the luxury of pondering these consequences. The immediate concern was containment. She placed Sheila carefully in the back of her car, the motion calculated yet trembling, the cold night air hitting her face as she drove into the darkness, away from prying eyes, away from the risk of immediate exposure. Every red light, every honk, every passing car heightened her anxiety. It was as if the city itself was conspiring to expose her. Back at the mansion, the sound of footsteps announced Deacon's arrival. He moved cautiously, sensing the tension in the air, but nothing could have prepared him for what he would find, or rather, what he wouldn't find. Taylor's absence was a glaring void, a silent alarm. He tried her phone repeatedly, each unanswered call ratcheting his anxiety higher. Memories of Sheila's relentless schemes, of moments when his judgment had been clouded, of nights spent fearing for Taylor's safety, all came crashing back. Deacon felt his chest tighten, his mind spinning with the worst possibilities. And then, the faint, unmistakable sound, the engine of Taylor's car pulling out of the garage. Without hesitation, he jumped into his own vehicle, following her trail through the night, each mile deepening the mystery and the dread. Meanwhile, Sheila's eyes fluttered open in the back seat of the car. Disoriented, her mind raced to comprehend the situation, to assess the danger. Her survival instincts kicked in immediately, sensing the threat without fully understanding it. "Taylor," she whispered, her voice hoarse, laced with confusion and fear. Taylor glanced at her briefly, a mixture of pity and resolve in her eyes, and murmured something equally soft, equally final. "This ends tonight, Sheila." The weight of that statement, unadorned yet loaded with the history between them, seemed to hang in the night air, heavy and suffocating. As they approached a secluded location, far from the Forrester mansion, far from the eyes and ears of friends and family, Taylor prepared for the next step. She knew what she had to do: neutralize the threat, prevent further harm, and ensure that Sheila could never manipulate, terrorize, or control anyone again. Sheila, still groggy and processing, attempted to speak, her words slurred and panicked. "You don't understand. Taylor cut her off, her voice firm but almost sorrowful. "I understand perfectly. And I can't let this continue." Her hands were steady now, her resolve carved into every action. She had been forced into an impossible position, and while guilt gnawed at her, she also knew that every second of indecision had led them to this exact point. Across town, Deacon's pursuit intensified. His instincts screamed that Taylor was in danger, or perhaps more disturbingly, that she had taken matters into her own hands in a way he couldn't yet predict. His mind raced, attempting to connect the dots, reconstruct Taylor's thought process, and anticipate Sheila's response. The tension was unbearable, every second a torment, every shadow a potential threat. He cursed silently, wishing he had acted sooner, that he had seen the signs, that he could have prevented this spiraling chaos. Meanwhile, in the back of the secluded cabin Taylor had chosen as a temporary refuge, Sheila's fury began to surface. Her earlier confusion morphed into raw rage, a dangerous combination that had the potential to erupt at any moment. Taylor, ever cautious yet increasingly determined, kept her focus sharp, knowing that Sheila's cunning could turn any second into a catastrophe. Words flew again. Accusations, justifications, manipulations, every syllable a battle for dominance. Yet Taylor remained unyielding, her eyes locked on Sheila, her mind calculating every movement, every possible reaction, every eventuality. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. Time had a strange elasticity when stakes were this high. Taylor felt exhaustion creeping in, but there was no time for fatigue. She had to plan the next steps carefully, contact authorities in a controlled manner, anticipate the fallout, protect her loved ones, and navigate the inevitable storm that would follow this night. Every decision now carried immense weight. One misstep could unravel everything. And then, the unthinkable happened. A sudden noise outside. A branch snapping underfoot sent both women spinning. Taylor instinctively reached for the gun, Sheila's survival instincts flaring in response. Both were poised in tense readiness, hearts racing. As the night held its breath, the shadows pressing close, each second a knife edge of suspense.